Welcome back, folks. Episode 16 of the Get a Grip on Life podcast. On today's show, we have Kelly Scanlan. Kelly Scanlan is a veteran. She served in Afghanistan at the age of 16 years old. She was injured in a training accident and suffered from PTSD for a while. She is a gold medalist in the Invictus Games for swimming, and she's a multi-medalist. She won a second medal. I can't remember if it's silver or bronze. She's the Bell Let's Talk. She's been a Bell Let's Talk ambassador. She's fought against the stigmas. She told me, I learned so much talking to her because it's one thing to hear about these things. It's another thing to sit down with somebody and have them define what PTSD is and then describe their own symptoms. It's very powerful. So I think you might find this show interesting if that topic interests you at all. So yeah, enjoy it. Hey, check us out on iTunes, review us. We're still giving away those $50 Amazon gift cards. So if we get a good review on Amazon, Matt will give you a shout out, maybe send you a gift card. Someone will get it. And we're going to need you to take a selfie, though, with it, just so we can put it up and make sure everyone knows that we are actually giving them away. Other than that, I hope you enjoy episode 16 of the Get a Grip on Life podcast. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Life podcast, Kelly Scanlan.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good. Hey, so you got a interesting resume here. Retired corporal from the Canadian Armed Forces. You joined the force at 16. That's pretty young.
Yeah, it's the youngest you can join. You can join the Army Reserve at 16 with parental consent.
I thought it was 17, but 16.
No, it's 16.
16 is you can join. Can you be deployed when you're 16?
No, you still have to be 18 to be deployed.
Okay, so you can begin your training and go through all the training, all the stuff you have to learn. What regiment did you join, or does it matter? Do you join a particular regiment when you join the Canadian Armed Forces?
You can. Certain people definitely have specific units they're looking at joining, either because of trade or because of history. I didn't have a specific one in mind, so I became a member of the Toronto Scottish Regiment, the 75th Company in Mississauga, Ontario, and that was just because of location.
Were you like like an infantry?
Infantry soldier, yeah. It's an infantry regiment.
And you were deployed in Afghanistan for 8 months at the age of 19. What year was that?
That was in 2010.
That's an interesting experience.
Yeah, interesting is usually the word I use for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's something very rare. Not a lot of Canadians can say that they've done that. And certainly not a lot of Canadian women can say they've done that. And not a lot of people under 20 can say they've done that. There's a lot of can't say they've done that when it comes to respect to you and your service in the Canadian Armed Forces. What was it like to be over there at that age?
Funny, because interesting is, like I said, usually the word I use. At that age, when I was 19, I'll say it was a big learning experience for me, a big growing experience. It was definitely not really what I thought I was walking into, and it definitely did kind of shift the course of my life based on what I saw there and what I got to do there and what I learned there.
And so what made you want to be in the Army at such a young age? You were still in high school.
I was still in high school, yep.
And did they have 4 years of high school then, or was it full 5 years then?
It's the 4 years of high school when I was in high school.
So you had 2 years left of high school.
Yeah.
And you wanted to join the Army.
Yes. So I joined mostly just because at that time I was looking for something to do, just like everyone else that age is. And
play soccer.
Yeah, you could play soccer. Played soccer when I was really young.
Yeah.
But my family is a very uniformed family. We've got a lot of members who serve in different uniforms, a lot of police officers, firefighters, no paramedics as far as I know, but other people in the military. So I was definitely inspired by that. And then at 16, I think a lot of people they're kind of looking to make their mark on the world, and I was no different. And the Army seemed a good way to do it. I could join young. I could actually get high school credits for joining the Army, so it seemed like a win-win at the time. And it was just something different. Everyone else my age they were getting jobs in restaurants or getting jobs in clothing stores, doing things that were typical teenage starter jobs, and I just didn't want to do something like that. I wanted to do something a little crazy, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds a little crazy to me. Although I tried to join the armed forces for a bit when I was 22, but I couldn't because I lived in a country. I lived in Belfast, Northern Ireland for a year, so they wouldn't let me join for 2 or 3 years. But that's a whole other story. But I'm wondering, like, when you joined, did you want to serve actively in a conflict, an area of where there's people shooting back at you? Is that something you wanted?
When when I first joined the Army, I don't think that's exactly what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about the fact that there was a war in Afghanistan. The thing that I think inspired me to want to serve was, as I was training, when I said I was doing my basic training and as I was learning how to be an infantry soldier, lots of the people who trained me had been to Afghanistan. And these were people I respected. They were people who really knew what was going on. They really seemed to have their fingers on the pulse, as it would say. And that inspired me to want to be like them. So I'll say when I joined when I was 16, I wasn't really considering, I should have been because I was joining the Army, but I wasn't really considering the war as an end point or as an aim. It wasn't until I was in and I had other soldiers around me who had that experience. I was like, yeah, I want to do what you did. I want to serve the way you served.
Why did you want to do that?
What I kind of tell everyone when they ask is it's kind of like training on a hockey team. You don't want to just always sit on the bench. Like if you do the training and you learn the skills and you learn the know-how, like you want to be in the game. You want to serve. You don't just want to sit at home and kind of just wait around for something to happen here. And like I said,
Do you think you were naive?
A little, definitely. Yeah, I think I had it, especially because I was 18 when I signed up to go to Afghanistan, and I turned 19 maybe a month before I actually deployed. And I really did.
Did you have a boyfriend at the time? Like, did you go to your school prom? I mean, your high school formal or whatever? Like,
I did go to my high school prom.
Like, it doesn't sound like, I mean, it doesn't sound typical.
Well, it definitely isn't. I went to my high school prom. And then it was the summer, and it was over that summer after I was finished graduating high school that I got the email and I got the letter saying, okay, you're being considered for a tour. You're going to this base on this date. You're going to be here, here, and here to deploy potentially around this time. So, yeah, I had a boyfriend when I started the training for it. We broke up before I went overseas, which was the better option in the end.
Sure.
And, yeah, I did all those typical teenage things, and I definitely don't think I was 100% prepared, because they can tell you the stories and they can kind of lay it all out for you before you go as best they can, but you really don't understand it until you're there and you're doing it. So I definitely thought that it was going to be different. I definitely thought that it's when you're young and you have that belief that you're really going to make a difference, you're going to change the world, and you kind of had to learn. I learned when I got there that it's not as easy as that. It's not as easy as one person making these differences here and there.
I think it's the opposite. If someone was to ask me, okay, so I'm not a historian, but I'm a little bit of a war history buff, a little bit. I would say it's the opposite. You can't make a difference in war if you're a soldier. You're a cog in a wheel. Like my perception in looking back at, the 20th century and some of those things, I don't think that's a realistic aim.
See, I would kind of disagree, but just in a different way. Like when people have that idea in their head of the changes they're going to make, they see these big moments. And what I had to realize when I was in Afghanistan was it has a lot less to do with the big moments and a lot less to do with the little seeds you plant, with the little legacies. And what I realized as an individual soldier, the differences I could make weren't always going to be the battles. They weren't going to be these big moments, but it was going to be the changes I potentially made in someone's mind. Like I worked with a lot of the Afghan locals. I interacted with the women and the kids and the men and different soldiers and police officers who were there. And I realized so much of the conflict just comes from a lack of understanding, from this never-ending circle of us not understanding them not really understanding us. And the changes you have to focus on as an individual soldier are the little ones. The way you maybe change someone else's perception about the direction the war is going in, or change their perception of you or your people or your mentalities.
I think a lot of people would say, how the hell do you know where the war is going, Kelly Scanlan?
Of course they don't.
You know what I mean? Like, I think I hate to point that out in such a rough way, but I don't think that's, when I think about it, I think about, I don't think that's a realistic way. Like if my son wants to join the Army, okay, he's told me that a couple times. He's 13 years old. I'd be okay with that. But I think that, people should be informed a little. I think there was a deficit in the information you received. If someone was telling you that you could make a difference in Afghanistan, Were you being told that by anybody in the Canadian Armed Forces?
No, I don't really think it came across like that.
How did it come out that you wanted to make a difference over there? I'm not picking on you here. I just want to know, you know, as for a young person, 19, when I look back on it, it's like I feel like someone can make a difference being a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, that's the thing is, and it's kind of similar in that way. And that's what I mean about being an individual soldier, is because I definitely had a lot of times when I was overseas where I felt like I was going crazy because I focused on the big. I focused on this fight or that fight. I focused on the fact that these politicians were having this argument, and it just seemed never ending. But I realized, like I said, the change was not going to be fast. But if it was going to happen, it was going to be down street level, we'll say. And that's why it's similar to policing in that way, that I had to be looking at the individuals I was interacting with, I was working with, and you can only change the people you directly interact with. You can only really change these moments in time. So I think...
Did you have a couple moments like that?
Yeah, and that's who I think about. I think about when I worked in the trauma hospital we had there. I think about we had kids who were injured in the conflict, or some of them were just injured doing regular kid stuff. Like we had a kid there who he broke his arm in a farming accident.
That must be kind of a relief in a little bit, actually.
Yeah, for him.
No, but I mean for anyone, you know, you kind of, at least there's something normal going on. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think of those interactions, like I think, so we had this whole ward of Afghan kids who were in there for a variety of reasons, and some of them were because of the conflict. They were because their cars had hit IEDs. They were because they'd been blown up or gotten involved in a spot they shouldn't have been. And then you had the kids, like I said, who they got injured in a farming accident and he broke his arm, and we'd have this whole group of kids there, and we'd get to be there. And I think about some of my interactions with them. So like one moment I had was I went in and there was a young boy there who his car had been hit by an IED and he was badly injured. But when I went in to interact with him and all the other kids were just sitting around enjoying, they were watching Pirates of the Caribbean and just being normal kids. We brought like Frisbees in and they liked that. And I got to interact with his grandfather who was in with him, and we barely spoke the same language. Like he spoke a tiny bit of English, I spoke a tiny bit of Pashtun, but we were kind of able to get across that point of he was thanking us. We put together a backpack that when his grandson was out of the hospital, he'd be able to go to school and he'd take the backpack, and that was something he was very grateful for. And one of the things, we had an incident where I had a camera on me, and a lot of them didn't have the technology for photos. So they were going around, because their families were kind of all there together. They said, like, take a family photo of us. And I'd take the family photo, and then I'd go and print it off, and I'd bring it back to them. And that was just these little things that I
mean, they don't have family photos?
Yeah, because they didn't have cameras, or they didn't have the technology based on where they came from or based on their background. So a lot of them like didn't have photos of them together. They didn't have photos of their kids. And that was something really easy for me, easy from our side of the world.
How many soldiers are like you?
Hard to say.
I would say the vast majority aren't like you. Not that they're bad, but they're just not being all so altruistic the whole time they're there. Some of them are just doing a job. I
don't want to say I was altruistic the whole time. Like, that was a nice moment that I had.
Yeah, sure. No, but it sounds like your position was altruistic, that you were actually there to try to help them.
That's definitely when I went in wanting to. And the thing is, I don't, like, lots of people go in, they want to do something good.
Sure.
Like, lots of soldiers come in, not all of them. Like, there are some there that are there with that mentality. But
I don't know what the, see, I'm trying to, I'm trying to figure out whether, whether there was a mistake in expectations.
I don't know. Like, I can't say. Everyone kind of went there with different expectations. The different countries went there with different expectations. And where we landed, I doubt is where everyone expected when we first started. I think one of the main issues with expectations is the fact that and this is just my opinion, like, I'm no expert in any way, but
sure, you're just talking to me.
Once you go into a war like that, And there is going to be fighting at the beginning because there are people there who they don't want to change their positions, whether they're in a position of power or just the mentality. Like they don't want to change what's going on there, and they have no interest in peace, and you are going to have to fight. But once that fighting is done, you need to rebuild. Like if you don't want to keep continuing this conflict, if you don't want to keep having this cycle happen again and again and again, you need to rebuild. And that takes a lot of different people with a lot of different mentalities coming together and doing, because you need people who are builders, people who are going to create whatever the new society that the people in Afghanistan want or that we're aiming to provide, who will work with people. And then you have to have the fighters who are ready to defend that world when it's threatened, because that was one of the issues I kept seeing is we did keep going in and we would build schools or build bridges or road work, wells, whatever. There was all kinds of programs to build stuff. But if they weren't properly defended, as soon as we were done building a school and we left, the Taliban would sweep in and take over it or destroy it or attack it. And you kept having to go back and kind of redo the same scenarios over and over and over again. And by
it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. People get tired. People get frustrated.
These counterinsurgency wars that they talk about now. Yeah. Very, very difficult to win these wars. Or if there is no way to win. There's only ways to lose slower, it seems like, when you see it on the news.
In my opinion, the way you need to win is you need to be there for a whole generation, maybe two. You need to get rid of the people who don't want to see change. You need to rebuild a society.
When you say get rid of them, what does that mean? Fight them to death?
Potentially.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, you look at the history of war and these counterinsurgency wars, one of the, the ones where they're intractable conflicts. You know, there's not like one person who's in charge that can surrender and then everyone surrenders.
Yeah.
Like that's what a lot of people don't understand. We defeated Germany and Albert Speer came out and he capitulated and the war was over. That was it. No more fighting. The Japanese emperor comes out and bows down before MacArthur and that's it. The war is over.
Yeah.
With these sorts of things, it's like pop-up, what do you call that game? Whack-a-mole.
Yeah, people keep popping up.
They just keep popping up and they just keep, they don't care. They're not fighting. Not that they don't care. I suppose they care a lot. But they don't see, I don't know if they're not really representing a unified population in a war. They're just warlords.
Yep. Well, and that's what I was saying, like, you need this whole generational change because you need it to be that group of people gets less and less support, becomes smaller and smaller, and eventually is just seen as the old way. If you can build a society that people want, that people are happy with, that they have things that they would rather have versus fighting for what they don't have or fighting for what they want, it can change. Because we saw it all the time. We had something kind of interesting like this where in the summer we call it fighting season and the winter was growing season. Now it's because in the summer it was too hot, nothing would grow. So the young men that weren't happy with the way things were going would go and fight over the summer. And then when the winter came and there was things to grow and things they needed to take care of, their families, the fighting really slowed down. Why? Because here was something that was important to them, important to their life, important to their family. And if you can build a society that has more than just that, it has potential opportunities for everyone in every direction, and that's what they're focused on instead of fighting. But that thing, to create that, you need the generation. You need people to buy in to what's being built there. You need them to want and enjoy what is being created. And you all have to be able to work together to build that society. It can't just be us going in and building it all and being like, this is the way it will be.
It sounds like colonization, actually, a little bit.
The idea.
Like, I hate to say that, but what you described to me has a little air of kind of, like, what I want to know is, what do we get out of it? You know what I mean? Like stability, oil, like, why would we do this for them?
Well,
it doesn't look like it's helped with terrorism much.
Well, that's because we didn't finish building or creating like a new society that everyone buys into there. Like, that was the thing, is that we never really ever finished rebuilding. We never really finished. We're
not committed to it. We don't care enough about people in Afghanistan. I think that's what it is. when the casualties toll starts to grow and grow and grow over here, and it seems like whenever I'm not to be negative here, but Afghanistan's been an intractable place for 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
First the Russians, then the British, Russians, then us, or then the West.
Which is why any conflict like that, you can't just defeat everybody and go home.
But why? Well, like, we have to be doing it for a reason. Like, it has to be a return on investment there of some kind. Why would we do it?
That depends on who you're talking to. The return on investment, what you think you get out of it.
Like, I hate to say we have to act out of self-interest in some place, or why don't we go to every country in the world and invade it and make it our way there? I don't know. It's tough to say.
Well,
not to get on I'm not an anti-war guy. You know, I mean, I believe that there are just reasons to do things, and I'm just like listening to you. I'm thinking it through.
I think if you're thinking altruistically, the idea would just be to make it a nice place. And the argument about, well, why don't we go everywhere? Like, everyone says that all the time as an excuse for, well, we just shouldn't bother with this. Well, just because you can't make everything good is no excuse to not try and make one thing good.
We weren't in Afghanistan to make Afghanistan good. We were in Afghanistan to prevent terrorism here.
Yep. But that's the thing, is they're kind of hand in hand, that if people are happy with the society they live in, if they can be friendly with the countries around them, the people around them, you're a lot less likely to get people becoming terrorists.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm not sure we're responsible to make that happen,
Responsibility is an interesting thing.
It is.
And different people will have different opinions on it. At the end of the day, yeah, you take the responsibility you want as an individual. You can take the responsibility you want as a country.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we all live here. We live in a society where it doesn't take months and months and months to get to each other now. Like, you hop on a plane and be in each other's homes in a matter of hours.
Sure, we live like Greek gods. We can fly around the world. Yep. We have all of the world's knowledge in our hands.
So maybe in the olden days you could say, oh, I'm not responsible for somewhere 6 months on the other side of the world from me, but we're not 6 months on the other side of the world from each other now. We're 6 hours.
I understand the world
from each other, and so everyone can take whatever responsibility they want, and then you kind of reap whatever you get out of it.
Okay, so you returned home, and you were diagnosed with PTSD.
Yes.
And I watched the video on that, and a lot of people hear about PTSD,
mm-hmm.
and I think there's with all mental illness, there's a little bit of stigma there. People wonder.
Absolutely.
A little bit. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. What is PTSD?
Well, without being a doctor, I can just kind of explain it from my side.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they're still kind of investigating why people get PTSD, why people are affected by it. I've been diagnosed with it, but I also know some of my friends who have been diagnosed, and the signs and symptoms that hit them are different from what hits me. So there's definitely different levels of severity. And then the one thing I want to hit on for PTSD is has kind of become the buzzword right now. And what I find is that whenever like a soldier or a first responder ends up with any kind of mental illness, automatically they get diagnosed as PTSD. When a lot of the time I've learned sometimes it's not PTSD at all, or sometimes it's not only PTSD, depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse issues, like these are really common ones, but very rarely does the media or the news seem to hit on and say it's one of these different illnesses.
There isn't
like
a distinct, there isn't like a distinguish, it's hard to say, like some, and whenever you hear about soldier, you're right, police officer, any kind of first responder or soldier, it's always PTSD. Yeah, it's like, it's, so do you mind talking about what it was for you?
Yeah. And just to hit on real quick, what I would say is that the Army calls them operational stress injuries, which is kind of like the phrase that covers all the mental health issues you can come. And then I believe in first responders, it's a critical incident stress. So those are kind of the blanket terms.
Like multiple critical incident stress, maybe, perhaps?
It could be, yeah. But those are kind of the blanket terms that could cover PTSD, depression, anxiety, any of the different things that could come out of a critical incident or a traumatic situation. For me, so I actually didn't, so this is why I bring it up, is I didn't actually just get diagnosed with PTSD. I got diagnosed with PTSD, a general anxiety disorder, and then a major depressive disorder. And out of the three of those, I'll actually say the depression hit me the worst. It had the most
It
effect
said
on my
all
life.
three, but I wasn't sure if so depression and anxiety are different than PTSD.
They are, yeah.
So what exactly makes PTSD uniquely different from that? I would think, oh, I'm depressed and anxiety because I have PTSD. Like I would think that's an extension from that.
It can be.
It can be, but it's not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't remember them off the top of my head. All the doctors that you see, all the mental health experts, they have a very specific set of criteria that you need to meet to get diagnosed with one or any of these things.
Sure.
PTSD, if I remember specifically for me, one of the things you need to have is I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing for it, but it's any kind of flashback episode to do with a specific incident. So that could be actual flashbacks, which people who really suffer from PTSD, like high levels of PTSD, have, where they can have flashbacks just sitting here.
So when you're saying flashback, like you're feeling the same feelings you would be feeling at the time of the event?
Well, it can be emotionally.
Okay.
It can be visually. It can be
you can be
auditory,
seeing things. Really? Hallucinations and stuff like that? Wow.
Yeah. So I know people who they really struggled severely, and they had actual like visible flashbacks where they feel like they were back in that moment. Some of them, for some people, and this is the one I had a lot, was just nightmares. Nightmares count as something that you kind of continuously have this flashback to a specific incident or incidents related to like a traumatic situation. So that's one of the things that differs PTSD from, say, just depression, is they'll have a lot of the same signs and symptoms. Yeah. But as far as I understand it, as soon as you throw in a flashback component of any kind,
like going back to an event.
Yeah, that's when they kind of start delving into, this is PTSD, or we can diagnose you with PTSD. If you don't have any kind of flashback, again, not being a doctor or an expert here, but that's when they'll be looking at diagnosing you with something else.
And so then you were struggling, and this was 2014, 15?
Well, that was probably some of my worst times. I was diagnosed, give or take, about a year, maybe 2 after I came home.
Yeah.
I'll say for the first 6 months, for the first year you're home, a lot of it is about kind of finding your place again, getting back into the rhythm, getting reintegrated. And for the first 6 months that you're home, you're always that person who was in Afghanistan. Like that's kind of how it always gets introduced to people, and so on and so forth. But once you are back into that rhythm, once you are back into normal life, that's when I think you really, or at least for me, that's when I started to notice things weren't right. I didn't feel right. I wasn't sleeping well. The big one, I think,
like after sort of the comeback 6 months or so, you're starting to settle in.
Yeah. I think in that first 6 months, like you kind of just accept whatever comes with it as just like stuff you carried over from tour, and that it'll go away eventually. But once a year has gone by, or more than a year has gone by, and it still hasn't gone away, and you're less about the army stuff, less about Afghanistan, and more about your regular life, that's when I definitely started to notice it more. Sleeping was always an issue for me. Insomnia, nightmares.
Were you staying at your parents' house, or did you have your own place?
Yeah, I was still living with my parents at the time. Okay. So I'd moved off the base and was now back at home.
Okay.
And the thing that really, I'll say, struck me was that it started off as just a day here or there where you kind of just feel bad, feel down, feel really tired, but for no reason. And
just well, there is a reason, but you don't know what it is.
But you don't know what it is.
Sure.
But like usually when you feel something like that, something's happened. Like your dog has died, and that gives you that really like bone tired. Yeah,
depression
feeling.
is natural sometimes for people. You know,
exactly.
You can feel that you lose your job, something happens. Yeah, but this is there's nothing happening in the moment to cause that specifically. Yeah. Interesting.
So it started as a day, and then it became a few days in a row, and then it became a week, and then a few weeks in a row. And that's when I really knew something wasn't right, when you have that tired down to your very bones, just sad, basically, but for no reason. Like nothing has happened, nothing's gone wrong, everything's actually fine, but you don't feel like it's fine. And that put together with the fact that I wasn't sleeping properly, that when I did sleep, I had nightmares, very anxious, like I would have like these bouts of paranoia, all of that kind of put together. Like they give you training before you go to Afghanistan. They give you all kinds of mental health lectures on what you're looking for, what you should be concerned about, what you should be worried about. They send you for a mental health briefing when you come home.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do kind of have all this sitting at the back of your mind that this is a potential thing you could be dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it clicked for me pretty quick after that something wasn't right. Something wasn't spinning the right way. So I went into a doctor, did the whole process.
Was it a military doctor?
A military doctor,
Okay.
military mental health expert. And did the whole process. They give you all kinds of paperwork to fill out.
Sure.
They talk to you. And based on that, they decide, okay, like you need to go be seeking psychiatric aid for this. And
what was it like to hear that?
I knew it was coming.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
That was the thing, is like some people are surprised when they get told, like, we think you need to talk to somebody. I wasn't surprised. Like, I knew before I ever went to see the doctors that there was something wrong. Like, I knew a long time before anybody else seemed to know that something wasn't right, that I wasn't my normal self.
And did you have trouble sharing this with your family or your friends, or were they ready to accept that and and support you?
I was very lucky. I'm really close with my family.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much as soon as I had the diagnosis,
Oh.
my parents knew about this, and they were a saving grace. Like, they were the rock that pretty much kept me steady for all the years that everything kind of was going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But telling everyone else was a lot more difficult. I think I mentioned it offhand to a few like close friends here or there. Some of my wider family, like my siblings, again, kind of knew something was going on, but they didn't know too much about it. But like you said, the stigma that exists
It's tough.
around mental health really makes it difficult to talk about, really makes it difficult to bring up, and to kind of just act as though life is normal when, in the back of their minds, everyone has something to say about it. Everyone has an opinion about it. And
suck it up, this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do kind of really just realize how little people know about any of this stuff, but they all have an opinion about it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. I mean, that's the tough part about with the mental health is like there's no. It's like people are suffering in a way that other people won't give credibility to.
Yeah, it's
like you have cancer.
Yeah,
it's like, all of a sudden, so PTSD. Oh yeah, what's that?
Well, the way I kind of liken it, I try and make examples to physical stuff so that people kind of get that understanding. The way I kind of liken it to is I imagine we're in that period. Imagine however many years ago before we invented MRI machines and CAT scans, when people had like ligament injuries or like tore a
soft
tendon,
tissue stuff. Yeah.
Stuff you
it's a great
couldn't,
comparison,
stuff you couldn't see, and that at the time we didn't have the science to show it. And you go around and be like, oh, like my knee really hurts, and people are like, your knee looks fine. Like, what are you complaining about? And we now can tell that maybe they tore an ACL, maybe they pulled something, maybe they completely tore something.
Sure.
But that's kind of the period we're at with mental health, where you don't look like anything's wrong, so I'm going to make my judgments about what I think is actually happening. And like we still see that even like with ligament and tendon issues, where people judge that even when we have the science to show it.
For sure.
So
tape it up.
Yeah.
Tape it up, man.
Walk it off, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So mental health is no different, is that people are working on it. They're inventing the science behind being able to show the physical factors of this, but it's not there yet.
They can demonstrate it now with those fMRI machines and stuff like that.
But the actual use of them are pretty rare and pretty widespread. So. Yeah,
the people that know about it know that it's real, but I think a large portion of the population, I think there's more, and I think it's good that Bell is, corporate partners doing something to push the awareness creation for people, because people suffer from this for sure. I mean, who am I to say? I mean, you're saying it to me. So.
And that's the thing, is like, this is, I'm sure before I went through all this, I had my own mentalities on it, and everybody does. Even now, having done it, like, I'm no expert, so I'm just like everybody else. Still kind of, I've tried to educate myself as much as I can, and I've had my own experiences, so that helps. But you really do just realize how little people know about any of it, any of the science, any of the research that goes into it, any of what any of it actually means. They just hear the buzzword now. and flip their minds around to, you've got a group of people who don't believe it's real. You got a group of people who believe it's real, but they
don't know what to do about it.
They have the misconceptions based on the media. And then you have the people who have their own experience, who understand it. But again, like I've had depression, I've had anxiety, PTSD, but there are so many like schizophrenia. Like I can't relate the same way to someone who's suffered from that, because it's not the same. They're not all the same.
I think a lot of people are living in an illusion of control. They think that it's just about self-control. I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and I work hard, and all the things that I have are because of my working hard. And I think that there's an element of, determination and courage and these types of things, but there's also an element of luck in not having, not being in this car accident, or not having these things happen to you in life, whatever they are. And a lot of people are suffering because of bad luck in their lives.
Yeah.
My aunt was in a brutal car accident, and her life changed forever after that. Mm-hmm. And that she can't change her life now. She can't just start working harder.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is with mental illness and PTSD and these types of things, people have a hard time. It's harder for them to sympathize, and I sympathize with the harder to them. I understand that. I totally get it. Yeah. How did you discover the Invictus Games?
The Invictus Games came up kind of really offhand. Another injured veteran that I know through a series of other activities kind of just posted about it one day online, I think on Facebook. I'd never heard of it before. And when I contacted him about it, he explained to me that the Invictus Games were this international sporting competition created by Prince Harry, kind of like the Paralympics. The one difference was that everyone who competed was an injured soldier from a variety of different countries that they kind of all brought together to compete. And so he posted up that he was trying out for the team, or that he was putting his name in for the team. And I was just kind of like, sure, why not? I'll put my name in for that. Sure, okay. And it all went in a completely unexpected direction from there.
Tell me about that direction. So you started off casual with it. Sure, I'll try it out. And then...
Yeah. So what was happening for me at the time, you have to understand that the position I was in, that was around mid-2016. Mm-hmm. So I had my physical injuries from my training accident. I had been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety. And for both of these injuries, I had been seeing doctors for years, trying to get them fixed, trying to figure out what would work for me, and just nothing seemed to work. I was in chronic pain. I was miserable all the time, really kind of hitting the point in my life where, and that's my early 20s, like it's supposed to be the best years of your life.
Sure.
And instead they were just misery. And I was really starting to kind of hit the point where I just wondered, like, what the heck is the point of living it all like this for the next 60 years? But I had a great support system around me who really kind of helped me keep it all together.
It got that dark for you?
Yeah, definitely. Wow. I definitely had days where you kind of just sit there and wonder, like why I live like this. I couldn't see you
thinking like that. I look at you now and I can't imagine that.
Well, that's the thing. 4 or 5 years ago, it's a completely different Kelly. It's a completely different person who was thinking like that, living like that. And you kind of just, it's hard to explain the mentality, but I was 23, I think, 24. Like I said, I'd been suffering with this for years. I had these chronic injuries, so everything I did hurt, like walking hurt, driving hurt.
Do you think depression makes... Oh, we lost a panel there. Sorry about that.
No problem.
One of our sound panels came down. Do you think depression actually increases, and PTSD and these types of mental illness actually increase your physical symptoms of pain?
I would say so, yes, probably.
Yeah?
That is one thing that they say... is that like aches and pain in your body is definitely increased by how you are mentally.
Right.
So I would probably, like, I did have this injury. It wasn't something that never existed, but I would definitely say it was probably exacerbated by everything that was going on with mentally, and then vice versa. Like, I'd say my mental state was just made worse by the fact that I felt physically bad. So the two of them
reinforcing each other.
Yeah, the two of them just worked together to make everything miserable.
Jeez.
So
you're laughing about it, thankfully.
I am now. Well, that's the thing is now that
that was a dark laugh we both did there.
Yeah. I wouldn't have then, but now that you kind of see that light at the end of the tunnel, it's a lot easier to look back and and realize kind of what you made it
Where
through,
you
what you
came from.
survived.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, at that time I had a ton of bad going on, and I had the support system kind of holding me together. And what I kind of decided in my head was that if I couldn't have a happy life, I'd try and have an interesting one. So I just signed up for whatever I could find. I went back to school, I traveled, I joined clubs, I did all kinds of things. I think I was looking for something to like wake me up, to bring me back to real life. And none of it ever worked. And so the Invictus Games was going to be just one more of these stories, one more interesting thing I was a part of. But I didn't expect anything out of it. Like, it was a sporting competition. I'd done sports when I was young. My parents made sure me and my siblings were active, but like, I'd never been high level. I'd never been competitive in anything. Never continued on with sports after I joined the Army, because the Army is a sport unto itself.
Sure, yeah. A lot of physicality going on there.
So I really don't even know what I was thinking when I signed up for it, because that was just not me. Like, sports was just not my thing. But I put my name in for the team, and right away, you kind of have this realization that this is a big deal. Like, Prince Harry's involved, and because Prince Harry's involved, tons of other world leaders are involved. People are watching this, and I knew that if I did make Team Canada and I competed in these games, that I was going to be on a big international stage. And it's funny because the negativity of that, actually, the idea of being embarrassed internationally and embarrassing your country internationally, is actually what motivated me at first to start training.
Okay.
It wasn't anything positive. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to win. It was, I do not want to shame Canada. Well, because Toronto was hosting too. I don't want to shame Canada well in Canada.
Well. Yeah, for sure. That's great.
So I started training for the games. I picked two sports originally. I had cycling and swimming. And again, I had no background in either of these. They were just, I know how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
I've swam in a pool before. Sure, I'll do that. And then I did end up actually getting selected for Team Canada, and ended up, as part of that whole process, also playing wheelchair tennis as my team sport. Yeah, that wasn't a sport I picked on my own. Tennis is not something I knew how to play or was good at, and I don't use a wheelchair in my regular day-to-day life. So it was all new to me, but they had an athlete who needed a partner, because tennis is a team sport.
Sure. And
they were just like, who's interested in doing this? And I foolishly put up my hand, and they were like, okay, you're going to be the partner. So
was it fun?
It was very tough to learn, but
I bet. How do you serve in a wheelchair?
Same way, you're just sitting down.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
so you competed, and you brought some hardware for us today.
Yeah, so
tell me a little bit about training and winning. Which, that's cycling and swimming?
No, they're both swimming.
Both swimming, okay.
Both swimming.
You look like a bit of a swimmer to me.
I like swimming.
Yeah.
That's probably why I won hardware. Yeah, the training for it, I started in my early days really focusing on cycling. And you have to understand that for me, the games are a great story. Like, the games were a great moment for me, but the training is really what changed it for me, because I had to take myself, first things first, I had to take myself out of my comfort zone, because I didn't interact with new groups of people. I didn't engage new groups of people when I was in that point in my life. I had my core group, and then that was it. But none of my core group knew how to do like competitive cycling or knew anything about bikes or racing. None of my core group knew anything about swimming or eventually tennis.
Can I ask you something about that for a second?
Yeah,
this
sure.
core group thing. So you when you come back with this PTSD, and I want to go back to, but it just that's interesting to me, is that you surrounded yourself with the people that were close to you before you had the incident, and that didn't expand. You just stuck with those, like you were kind of stuck with that group. And you didn't want to explore other things? Is that part of it a little bit? Yeah,
that's definitely part. Like, again, everyone's kind of got their own things. For me, like,
sure.
and any of my family could tell you, like, in the years that I was doing this, like, I hated leaving my house. I hated going out and doing anything, even family events where, like, I knew people. Just, I was just so tired and anxious about doing it that, like, I didn't want to interact with anybody. I didn't want to open up to new people, so I never really brought very few new people, I'll say, ever came into my life.
It's kind of like you were stuck socially too, not just emotionally, but socially.
Yeah. And same with like, didn't like crowds. So again, when you're in your early 20s,
Sure.
all the activities
Concerts.
everyone wants to do, they're these big, loud, crowded, kind of crazy events, and I just hated that. I hated the out of control. I hated, it made me really, really anxious to do, and then it made me really tired to do. So
not wanting to embarrass your country.
Yeah.
And training for the Invictus Games pushed you out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, well, it started.
I don't know if that's whatever zone.
Well, no,
you were in.
it is.
It's a comfort zone.
It pushed me out of my comfort zone because I was doing something new. I had to find new people who knew anything about this. So the relationships I created started kind of professionally. I went and I found a cycling coach who put me into a cycling club, and I'll say they were the first ones that it was. When I got involved with them, they really, 3 or 4 of them came in and kind of like adopted me right from the get-go. As soon as they knew I wasn't a cyclist coming into it, but once they knew what my goal was at the end, I had 4 or 5 people who they were really into cycling. They were like, we're gonna make this a thing for you. They got me sorted out with all the equipment and the bikes, and they would be the ones who would be calling me when I didn't want to leave my house, when I didn't want to train. They were like, we're going to go for a ride. You're going to come to training tonight. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing that. Really just drawing me out.
Yeah.
And they went from it just being kind of professional about learning the sport to they all became my friends.
Pushing for Kelly Scanlan.
Yeah. And then so they became part of like Team Kelly. And I just got
I want to be on Team Kelly too.
Yeah. Hey, we can go get hats. It's a ton of fun.
Okay, so you're riding your bike, you're swimming.
Yeah, I got very lucky with once I did open myself up and find these new groups of people, because it started with that core group of cycling people, and then other people really unexpectedly kind of just started coming. And I had my other members of Team Canada who I engaged with. So again, 3 or 4 of them became. And they were going through the same things I was going through. They were dealing with physical injuries, dealing with mental injuries. So we all bonded together for that. And then my swim coach, she was like a godsend, if you believe in it, that kind of stuff. Because how I ended up with her was I was doing filming for like a promo they were doing for Invictus. And I didn't know anything about swimming technique or diving or really any of it. And
I'm laughing again, but...
No, I laugh at myself thinking back to it too. And she was the aquatic supervisor at the pool in Milton, in my town. And she saw me diving, and I think just probably cringed inside as someone who knows how to do it. And she kind of came up to me and said, like, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, like whatever advice you want to give. Sure. I don't know what I'm doing. So, and this is only a couple months before the games are actually set to go. And she just grabbed onto me and taught me everything she could. She made she took special time out of her day to make sure I knew the dives, make sure I knew the strokes, make sure I knew the rules. Like, she had me in that pool several times a week, and swimming wasn't originally my focus. Like, cycling was my focus. But she made me, doing the time and doing the training with her, actually think that even though we were only a couple months out from the game, swimming could actually be something I can be competitive in. I could win in.
Wow.
So I just got...
Do you feel that before you competed? Do you feel like, did she give you a feeling like, you might have a chance? I've looked at the times or something like that. You might have a chance to win.
Well, that's what I was doing. I was looking at the times. I looked up the times from people who had won the year before, and I started with them as like goals, beat these times. And in certain strokes, I was close, and in other strokes, I would have maybe gotten fourth.
Yeah.
But I kind of used those to start as my goals. And then as the training went on and as I became more positive, and I really just started to kind of, and that's the other thing too over all this training is I became a completely different person in the 16 months of training that I did for the Invictus Games. I became more positive. I had like less episodes of depression. I was sleeping better, less nightmares. I was feeling better. I was more socially active. Physically, I felt great. Like, the pain I was in reduced, and in certain areas just disappeared altogether. So I was in a very positive place by the time the Invictus Games rolled around. And because of that, I was able to be really positive about the fact that, irrelevant of what happened at the games, like, winning medals is nice. Anyone who says they don't want to win a medal is lying.
Yeah.
But they weren't the ultimate goal, because at the end of the day, like, I'd got my life back. I'd got all of this back that I never thought I'd have again. So for me, I already won before the games ever happened. And then once the games actually came, I got a lot of positivity out of when you can look at your competitors and be just as happy and just as excited for them to win, because that's the thing about competing against other soldiers is these are your brothers and sisters from all around the world. They're other soldiers who have struggled the way you've struggled. They've suffered the way you've suffered. They've suffered with injuries. They've battled mentally to come back from it and be able to be here. So even if I came in last place, I could look at the 10 people in front of me who had won and just be like that's awesome.
You're cheering for them too.
Yeah, and
for sure.
And that just made it a really positive experience because you're happy for them and you're excited for them as much as you're excited for yourself, because all of this, just getting to the games for all of us was the winning. And then that made it really easy to not be competitive with them and create friendships with them. Because for me, I came in with my best times from training for swimming, for example, and my only aim was beat that time. I was telling myself, I didn't care what the other girls in my categories did. I didn't care how they placed. It was, I had a time that I was coming to beat, and as long as I beat that time, I was happy. And I just got really lucky that in 2 of my swimming events,
I don't know if you got lucky.
Well, lucky in the way that I beat my best times, but those best times also equaled medals in those categories.
I don't know if that's luck or if that's hard work and competing hard. I don't know if it's luck. I think it's
more just I think lucky that they matched. That I had to put in the training. I pushed myself the hardest I did because I got 2 new best times. I got 2 new best times in both the qualifying rounds. And
so when it mattered, you performed your best.
Yeah.
I don't think that's luck. I wouldn't call it luck.
Just a turn of phrase.
Yeah. I don't think it's luck. I think it's working hard and knowing when it's time to really take it up a notch. And you can't, some people take it up a notch in training and then they go down in competition.
Yeah. Well,
it's good for you. That wouldn't really matter anyway, because you said you won before you even got there. But I don't think you won before you even got there, because I see some hardware right here. Can you tell me about the bronze medal first? Yeah,
so the bronze is actually the first medal I won.
Okay.
In the qualifying rounds, it was from backstroke, 50-meter backstroke. Qualifying rounds, it came in 3rd against these 2 Australian girls who were super fast.
Okay.
Island people.
Yeah.
And then when the actual finals came, again, 3rd place. So my bronze is actually the first medal I won. And that,
how did it feel? Did they raise the flags up?
You bring your flag out with you.
Okay.
So I got to carry the Canadian flag out to the podium. And the bronze, I believe, was presented by, but I hate myself because I can't remember his name. Not our current Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, but the Lieutenant Governor before her.
I know who you're talking about as well.
Peter Only?
I don't think that's his name.
I don't know. I don't remember what his name is. Someone Google it for me.
Yeah, Google it up. Search it up there, Manny.
Watch the video of me getting my medal. He's in there.
I don't need Google. I got my dad beside me.
Dad knows it.
And then the gold. What was that stroke?
And then so the gold was 15-meter breaststroke, and
I watched you win that one actually in your video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the gold, not to knock down the Australians, but the gold medal, this gold medal is the only gold the Australians didn't take in swimming for those categories.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I feel a little bad because the girl who won gold and pretty much like her and her partner, there were 2 Australian girls, both super nice. So I feel bad that she couldn't have the clean sweep of golds, but it's nice to have one.
I don't feel bad at all. I'm quite happy.
She gets to take home 1 silver and a series of other gold medals. But yeah, it's the one gold the Australians didn't take in our category, and it was the 50-meter breaststroke. And me and her were very close. Like I remember that race very, very distinctly, because what I always told myself for breaststroke, it's different from front crawl in the way that you can look ahead, you can see what's ahead of you. So what I kept telling myself is I said, as long as the water in front of me is smooth, I know I'm winning. So you go and it stayed smooth. And I remember maybe we were like less than 2 meters from the end, and I started seeing splashing out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, oh my God, she's coming.
I saw that girl coming up on you. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, she's coming. And that gave me that last boost of power to hit to the end. That and it's amazing when you get to compete in your hometown.
Sure.
Because again, breaststroke, like you're kind of popping up in and out of the water, in and out of the water, and every time I would come up, I could hear everyone like chanting Canada, and
Sure.
that's another very motivating factor in the end. And came up out of the water, and immediately I was looking for the times, and as soon as I saw my lane come up first, you're just kind of like,
it must have been,
wow.
Mine must have been blown.
It's hard to say. It was kind of crazy, because like you said, you trained for 16 months to get to that one like 30-second moment, and for it to all be done, and then you're focused on too. Like I was happy, but then you're watching the other girls around you. So again, this is something that you'll see at Invictus that's kind of unique to this competition. Is as soon as you're done your race, you're looking back to see where everybody else is, and not to see how far behind you they are, but to see if you got to cheer them forward too. Because we have girls in my categories, or girls and guys in all these categories, who their injuries mean they're competing, but they're not going to be competing to win. They're competing to like defeat that moment. And so we had people who were going to be slower than the rest of us. And I just remember looking, seeing my time, being really happy and excited for 2 seconds, and then seeing that the other girl from Team Canada who was with us, she was a little behind the pack, so jumping in and just like cheering her on to the end.
How'd it feel to take out that Canadian flag to the podium?
That one felt great. Like that was, it's always a great moment to be able to represent your country surrounded by Canadians, and everyone's cheering in Canada. So that was a great moment. And I still remember, again, like I remember the day pretty distinctly. The Australian girl, who I think she won bronze, kind of like leaned over to me, and she's like take in this moment. She's like, you're the Invictus champion for this category. Like take it all in. So we went out, and that medal was presented by retired General Rick Hillier, who, for anyone who doesn't know, like almost everyone in the Army loves that guy. Like he's someone everyone dearly missed when he finally did retire and move on. And he's still very involved in veterans groups and organizations, and everyone just loves him. So to see him be the one who came and presented him, I was really excited. And I remember having to explain it to the Australian girls, because like they don't know who he is. Sure. And they were kind of like, why is everyone excited to see this guy? I'm like, no, he's one of the good ones. Like you want to be happy that he's the man presenting it. And he came around. He gave each one of us a challenge coin, his challenge coin, gave us our medals, and then saluted each of us. So
that's nice.
It was, it's a great moment, and I definitely treasure that one.
I bet. So you've moved on from the Army, you've retired.
Now I have, yep.
Yeah, and you're a firefighter in the town of Milton.
I am, one of their part-time firefighters.
You can't get enough of it, eh? The first responder kind of family thing you got going on.
No, gotta move from one uniform into the next. Yeah. That's the whole life.
Yeah, there's something that's Scanlan about you. I'm going to put Matt in a uniform, actually. You're getting a uniform, Matt. Studio manager. Spokesperson for Bell Let's Talk. Tell me a little bit about that.
So a lot of that came from the Invictus Games. So before the Invictus Games happened, I'd never gone public with any of the mental health stuff that had been going on with me. Like I said, I had close friends and family that were aware, but otherwise it was pretty much a closely guarded secret. And several months into the training, I don't know why they reached out to me, but the Invictus Games said they were looking for people to come and kind of talk about their stories and talk about what had happened with them and explain like what the Invictus Games meant to them. And I agreed, and it was one of the most stressful situations of my life, because I had always kept all of that secret. I was always worried about the stigma that would come with it. I was always worried about what someone would say about what it would mean for my life, if anybody knew that this was going on. So I didn't sleep for like the 3 days before I was supposed to give that speech. It was a media event. They had media outlets coming, and I was supposed to get up and I was supposed to talk about my story. And I tried to
into a microphone.
Yeah.
In front of reporters?
Oh, yeah. There was supposed to be a room of reporters, and I was supposed to get up and talk about this. And I didn't sleep. I tried to write something out, but every time I tried to write, I just realized like how much there was to the story, how much
where do you start?
happened. Yeah, like where do you start? What do you say? So I couldn't get it written out. Took the train into town, and it was some of the most stressed I ever felt. Like there was so much anxiety about this moment. And they were really good about it. Like they kept saying, like, you don't want to do this, like you don't have to do it. And I just, for whatever reason, I was determined, like this was going to be the moment. Like let's finally get this all out in the open.
Why is that important?
I don't know.
There's something important about that. And what is it? Is it self-acceptance?
I don't know what it was. I think at the beginning, it may have just been like wanting to accept the situation and wanting to not have to be ashamed and hide it anymore. And then later, it was about realizing like I had kind of made the journey forward. So hopefully I could remind someone else that they could do it too. And then educating people about mental health and educating people about what was going on with soldiers and first responders and anybody who had suffered from a mental health illness or injury. So I got up in front of the group. I had nothing written down. I still remember saying to them, I said, like, listen, I didn't write this down, so I'm just going to talk. And I said, I really hope this comes off as being like sincere and not being ill-prepared.
Sure.
And I just talked. To this day, I cannot remember what I said. Someone filmed it, and I've never been able to bring myself to go back and watch the footage. But I just remember like talking and talking and talking until I think I saw someone check their watch in the audience, and I was kind of like, okay, I feel like I've been talking for a very long time, so I'm going to stop talking now, and that's going to be that. And kind of left it at that. And for whatever reason, whatever I said resonated with people, because after that, I started getting a lot more calls from the Invictus Games wanting me to come and do more talking events, from media sources who wanted to interview me. And yeah.
You're a compelling person.
Thanks.
No, you are. Like when you speak about it, it's very compelling.
Well,
so I can see why.
Yeah, well, whatever I said that first day drew them in somehow. So after that,
that's not what you were trying to do.
No.
You're just trying to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after that, so they started getting me to do more stuff. I started going and...
Yeah, you're 100% authentic, actually.
Thanks.
That's what it is. You're 100% Kelly Scanlan, actually. There's nothing... when I'm listening to you, it's coming right from your heart, actually. Well, I can sense that from you.
I try and be honest about all of it. Like, it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to mess something up. You're always going to say something different, but I try.
I know why they like to listen to you, for sure. I can tell.
Well, that's good. They obviously, someone liked it because they kept coming back. And the more I spoke about it, the easier it actually got for me. So in the early days, talking became almost this type of self-healing. The more I spoke about it, the more comfortable I got just accepting it for myself and accepting it what it was and feeling better about it and caring less about what everyone else had to say about it. And so I didn't think it would be that way. Like, I didn't think it would help.
What do other people have to say about it? I feel like other people should have to listen to and not say less. I mean,
everyone has something to say.
Yeah.
So you were talking about Bell Let's Talk, and I realized this turned into a long story to lead to that. Bell Let's Talk is actually, I made the so after the Invictus Games were done, Bell reached out to Invictus looking for a story that they could share as part of the 2018 spokesperson, because I guess Bell said that they had Claire Hughes, who was this big spokesperson for them, but Canadians wanted to see other Canadians, people kind of on the ground level. And so they were reaching out to people who were kind of everyday Canadians from across the country. And I was one of the people they reached out to and asked to come and share my story. And so I went, I told my story to them, and they made the videos and they made the billboards and the posters and got involved with 2018 Bell Let's Talk. And Bell Let's Talk is an interesting example because they're so widespread. Like the Invictus Games, most of the people who get involved in the Invictus Games luckily are like, they want that feel-good story. So I did get negativity out of the Invictus Games, but we had a pretty good group, close-knit, and you had a lot of support coming from the veteran community and your families and the other athletes. Bell Let's Talk was on a much grander scale, a much wider scale. And I made the mistake once my video was posted up, reading the comments after.
Ooh.
And yeah, I've never made that error again.
Who would write in comments like that?
Everyone. You'd get the supportive comments. You'd be people saying like,
Sure,
good for you for coming out about this. But the people who had something to say about it, like at that time I was a firefighter.
Was it anti-military comments?
No,
or?
it was things like you're weak, like you joined the Army, like what did you expect you were going to get? I don't know who he is, but I had a firefighter message me and say, because I was a part-time firefighter at the time, and
Sure.
that was part of the Bell Let's Talk campaign. And they straight up said, like if you think you can do this job with like that kind of weak mentality, quit now because you're just going to get everybody killed. And just endless comments like that about it's not real, it's all made up. I've been through stuff like this. Like what do you have to complain about? Like who are you? This is all like BS. Basically, you're just looking for attention.
People are so tough when they hide behind social media. Eh?
Yeah, everyone's
hiding behind a Twitter handle or something. You're a tough guy or whatever.
Yeah, everyone's got a lot to say on the internet.
Yeah,
and I've never gone back to any of it, though I have started to consider, because I have realized when you're going to do mental health advocacy, you don't need to reach the people who already support you. Like, they're going to support you no matter what. You need to reach the people who either aren't sure or don't support you at all. And I've almost considered going and finding all these comments and almost doing, like, answers to them, like calm, nice ones about people who don't believe it's real, or people who have comments about, like, why do you think you can do this, or why do you think you can do that, or what are you going to do about this, or none. Almost giving like realistic answers about, well, this is how I do this, and this is how I deal with that, and this is how I've learned from this, and you made this comment about this mental health thing, but it's actually like this, and if you look up this science, and because at the end of the day, we don't need to convince the supporters, you need to convince everybody else.
Yeah, the undecideds for sure.
Yeah.
Convince them to do what, though? Just to believe.
To understand.
To understand, yeah.
Yeah. The people who don't believe it's real, like, it is real, this is a real thing, you need to understand that. And then for the people who just, like any illness.
I think there's an element of, and you tell me what you think of this. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll put it to you, and then you can tell me to shut up, or you can tell me to, maybe I'm right. I think there are people who abuse these labels in a way. Does that make sense? And I think, I think we see that sometimes in society, and that's actually more disgusting than so maybe taking issue with it. That's probably the worst thing to do, is if you're not sick, to pretend you are. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are suspicious. If I'm to say make an argument for some of these internet trolls or whatever, mm-hmm. they may know a lot of people who they suspect of faking these injuries.
Yeah,
you said mental health injury. Is that a real term?
That's something I just use.
Okay.
Terminology is very important. Mental health injury is something that I got interested in the Invictus game. Another veteran actually came up with that. And the reason...
It's an interesting term, actually.
Well, the reason we say injury is because when you say illness or disorder, it kind of just makes people think there's something wrong with you, and that's that. But specifically for me when I'm talking...
There's an event that happened.
Well, I was going to say specifically for me when I'm talking to soldiers in that way, an injury is something you can recover from. An injury is something you can bounce back from. An illness or a disorder in their mind isn't. So if you say like...
It's more permanent.
Yeah. It's something that's just, it's always going to be something that ruins your life basically, and you're just going to have to live with that. But when you tell someone it's an injury, the mentality is like, oh, well, we can go see like a doctor about that. We can come up with supports for that. We can do the physio for it. And there are these kinds of mentalities for mental health. People just need to know more about them.
I think it explains it better for a veteran too.
Veteran, first responder, just
or first responder, like, or something where there was something very traumatic. I mean, post-traumatic, right?
Yeah.
But something that happened. My ex-brother-in-law. You know how families go.
Yeah.
So my ex-brother-in-law was a paramedic, mm-hmm. and he actually attended at a scene where the father murdered his wife and kid and then killed himself. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then obviously that's pretty brutal.
It's a tough situation.
Yes, And, you know, you see that. I mean, that's not something like, you know, people, when you're imagining, okay, what's traumatic? Well, that's pretty darn traumatic to see that. So there's an event there. And I think that idea of this idea of a mental health injury, I've never heard that term before. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think
it changes the way you think about it, actually.
And that's the whole idea, is that's not a scientific term. That's not a term that doctors use. I think the first time I heard it used was there's OSI, which is operational stress injury, and then PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I heard someone call it PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, he said in his interview. And I remember asking him about it, and that's what he explained to me. He said, like, an injury you can come back from. We were talking.
You can rehabilitate an injury.
Yeah, we were just specifically thinking about soldiers in that instance, but it goes widespread to anybody else.
Sure. Like, if there's something to a disease that you develop it and it's unexplained. Yeah. Too, as well. Like when you said post-traumatic mental health injury, there's something that happened, and this is the result, and this is what I'm dealing with. There's something that makes it more specific. That's an interesting term.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is when people think of they're sick, it's you take a medicine, like depending on what the illness is. Obviously, you take some kind of medication. That's what makes you better. But there isn't like a one fix-all medicine for mental health right now. There are medications you can take which can assist you, but that may not be the number one fix. It when it's an injury, there's something you could do, like you can do at home to improve it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, then you climbed a base camp in Mount Everest. How was that? Just throw that in there at the end here. So, 2018, not that long ago.
That was in April this year. There's.
How come you didn't go all the way to the top? You lazy?
Yeah.
Joking.
It was long.
Yeah,
it was hard. No, just none of us were trained to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's an organization, True Patriot Love, which they do so they're a veterans assistance organization. And every year they do an expedition, which is this big crazy adventure somewhere.
Okay.
And they take a team mixed of veterans and military members and civilians and kind of mix them all together and go on this crazy adventure together. As people learn different things from it. I think for a lot of people, it's a good reminder that you can still achieve so much. You can do so much. So this year, I was lucky enough to be selected for the team. They did the climb to Everest Base Camp. We didn't go all the way to the top. It's a very long adventure.
Serious, yeah.
And so we had a team of 20.
How long does it take you to get to the base camp?
I think it took us, give or take, around 2 weeks to climb up.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the thing. The higher you get, and
how many people were you with?
There was a team of about, I think it was 20 people who were selected for the team, and then we had 10 support people with us. Okay.
So 30 people.
Yeah. So
it takes about 2 weeks to get up there.
Yep. Give or take.
How long does it take to get down?
I want to say it took us around a week. It all mashes together.
Okay, so you don't worry your parents at all even now, eh? First the Army and then a firefighter, now climbing up Mount Everest?
I think I constantly worry them, but I just constantly always have to remind them and be like, well, I survived the war when I was 19.
Sure.
I think I can make it through the rest of it.
Yeah.
I hope, if without them holding my hand. I'm sure I constantly worry them, and some of their gray hairs are from me, though I'm sure a lot of them are also from my siblings.
I think Matt's got a couple of gray hairs up there too.
I definitely think my brother and my sister have given them a few over the years.
Yeah, I have 4 kids, and I'm just waiting to see what I already lost my hair.
Yeah.
So
between the three of us, well, they got a lot of gray hair.
What's Team Rubicon?
Oh, so Team Rubicon is I'm involved in all kinds of veteran organizations. Sure. And this one,
I think you're probably very good at it too. Like from listening to you.
I love the team mentality. Like I love working with other Army people, whether or not retired or still in. A lot of them have such a great work ethic and such a great mentality on like, let's get it done. And that's what works really well for Team Rubicon. So Team Rubicon is a international disaster response team, and it was created in the States. And it was started by a group of Marines. And what they realized was that soldiers were surprisingly very well prepared to be involved in disaster response. They're used to being able to carry heavy weights far distances, work long days, only get like little bits of food and little bits of sleep and still go on and keep going the next day.
They have the training, sure.
So they created this organization that it started off as just veterans, and then they pulled in other first responders, so police, fire, paramedic, doctors, so on. And then it just opened to whoever wanted to be part of a team like this. And it started in the States and then spread all around the world. So now there's teams in Australia, Norway, the UK, and Team Rubicon Canada was formed out of the wildfires in Fort McMurray. So
okay. So the Canadian branch was formed out of the wildfires.
Yeah, so the wildfires in Fort McMurray were happening. The U.S. team existed at the time, and the Canadian team was kind of just in original talks. So the U.S. brought a bunch of their people who had the experience up, brought in a ton of Canadians to learn and help run this operation. And then from there, Team Rubicon Canada was born. So that's an organization that I got involved in just before the Invictus Games. And I'll say they were a good kickstart, a good jumpstart for me kind of starting my road. Because when you get injured and when you're starting to get out of the Army, you really start to wonder, like, can I ever make a difference on like a big world scale again? Can I be involved in situations like this? And
why did you let that go?
Why did I let it go?
Why don't you let the big difference thing go? Like you don't have to make a big. There's no. I mean, you're doing it, yes, but it seems like you're very concerned about this.
Well, as big as the world is,
like it's beautiful in one sense, but another part of me is saying, why don't you focus on Kelly Scanlan a little bit and like making, I don't know, just I mean, you have the like it seems like you want to make this big difference, and it's great, but I'm wondering, none of us, I mean, I don't even know if, maybe this is a bad question to ask, but it seems like you're after something, and I think you've already done everything. I mean, looking at this, you've made a difference.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit, but
yeah, there's I mean, I don't, if you're doing it for, like, I think that the gold medals in the Invictus Games, the spokesperson for Talk, that's a lot already, is it not?
Yeah, but I like doing it. Like, that thing is, I get something out of it. I get something positive out of doing something positive. Like,
I get it. Okay.
It's not always easy. Like I said, like something like Bell Let's Talk, you can get a lot of negativity out of it. But I don't know. I guess I just got raised in that family of being part of the community and doing something. And as much as the world's this huge place, it's also a kind of a small place.
Sure.
We've all got so much to do with each other and so much we can build together. And it's not always perfect. Like that all sounds a lot more altruistic than I want to claim to be. But I like being engaged in stuff like this. I like being involved. I like putting something decent back in the world. I like using my energy to help someone who just needs that hand up, and you hold on to that whole idea of pay it forward, that maybe you plant that seed of something good and they grow and it gets passed on to someone else. And I just kind of again, I'm not perfect. Like, I have my bad days.
Not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I think you're fantastic, actually.
Thank you. But I kind of just have that whole mentality of, if you try your best to, I think they're really focused on how the world's a negative place, and that makes people really negative. And I just kind of had the realization that being negative about the world being negative isn't going to make it positive.
So good.
So it's, yeah,
that's so good.
You try your best. Even the little things matter. Just having a nice conversation with someone, giving someone that little hand up, help them change a tire, help them when they get hit by a flood, whatever it is. You don't always have to be like that magical Mother Teresa, but the little things can make something better for someone else, and maybe that makes them more positive, makes them do something better for someone else, and it's that series of little butterfly effects that maybe makes something big happen in the long run. Being negative about the world being negative doesn't make it any more positive. Yeah. The world needs more Kelly Scanlans. Thank you for coming on the show. Why don't you show everybody your medals up there? Hold them up. Those are pretty awesome. There's the bronze. There's the gold. Wow. Thank you very much for your courage. You're a remarkable woman. Well, thank you for having me. It's there's always a lot to talk about, and hopefully we got a little bit of it out today. Yeah, I think we did. Thanks a lot.
folks. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I don't know if enjoyment's the right word. I hope you had your mind open as much as I did on episode 16 of the Get a Grip on Life podcast. Kelly Scanlan, thank you for coming on the show and for sharing your story. Very courageous. Yeah, I had nothing but admiration for you. All you folks listening out there, now that you are, kind of digesting what we just heard from Kelly and her whole story, and the just the overcoming of PTSD. It's funny because it's hard for me to, as someone who just hearing about that, it seems like I didn't get this right. Hang on, let me do another one. What I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to remain reserved with this one a little bit. You know what I mean?
I get you.
I don't want to be like, hey, fucking iTunes, man, after they just listen to, Kelly. So, hey, folks, review us on iTunes. Why? Because we have a special plan. We're trying to get to the top, the new and exciting realm. So review us on iTunes. Check us out. And if we really like your review, we're going to send you a $50 gift card. I don't know how many Matt's got up his sleeve. He's got a few up his sleeve. We're going to give them all away. And he's just going to give it to his favorite one. So, and you're going to need to take a selfie with it. So, do it, please, iTunes. Hey, Kelly, thanks for coming on the show. I have nothing but admiration for you. Great story. Love the fact that you're back in the game as a firefighter, doing that kind of work that you love. Wish you all the best in the future. That's episode 16, folks, of the Get a Grip on Life podcast.